Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 in a series of how to play Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon by Awakened Realms. In the previous video we learned how to set up our character, we learned where to place cubes for their starting stats of their energy, health, and terror, how to set up their starting attributes, starting resources, their starting combat and diplomacy deck, and also their advanced combat and diplomacy deck. We also learned about how what happens when our character's health gets down to 0 or their terror gets up into the high area. If you guys haven't watched that video yet, please go back and watch this and come back to part 2. In part 2, we're gonna learn how to set up chapter 1, how to get the map all set up. We're gonna learn about what all the components of the game are for, so on and so forth. So, we can just stick these to the side for now. We'll be using these a little bit later. And just for just so everybody knows, I will be doing a video on how to do combat and diplomacy later on. For right now, we're going to learn how to get the first chapter all set up and ready to go. Okay, so a couple of things you're going to need. First, I like to keep a copy of the rulebook nearby. One thing I love about this is there is a rule summary on the very back of the rulebook. This is I was actually writing this whole rule summary of the rule book as I was reading it. You can actually see it right there. And then I got to the end and realized there was a rule summary already written out for me. So I like to keep this nearby just in case I need to double check a few things. The other thing you're gonna want to get a space for is the exploration journal. In the next video, I will talk about how this works and some of the nuances about it in the next video. But keep this nearby. You're going to be referencing it a lot. So make sure you have that. Okay, next up, you're going to want to grab the secret deck. So this is the mini deck of cards that it says secret on in the bottom right corner and has all the numbers, just a singular number on the back. Now, I'm not going to tell you what's in this deck because, well, it is a secret. There's a few things to note about it. When you first open up this deck, it is not lined up in sequential order. It is highly recommended that you do so. You want to line it up so it goes, in a nice order of 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. Another thing to note is that there's a lot of spaces in between the numbers that don't exist. So, for example, let's see. Let me see if I can find one. Okay, for example, we go from secret card number 21 to secret card 25. Now, there's not supposed to be any cards in between these. Excuse me. Excuse me. There's not supposed to be any cards in between these, so don't freak out when you're flipping through the secret deck and you notice that it seems like there's missing cards, but there's not. Another thing of note is as you're flipping through, you may notice that there are 4 copies of secret card number 66. It is supposed to be that way. It is not a factory defect. There are supposed to be 4 copies of secret card number 66. So, just get this deck lined up in sequential order, set it aside, and you should be good to go. Now, you won't be getting into that very often. The only time you get cards out of the secret deck is when the exploration journal tells you to do so. Next up, I want you to grab these cards, the cards that look like this. This is your character's skill cards. The more you level up your character, the more skills you can get, and they give you extra bonuses and some really, really cool effects. Now, one thing that's really important about this deck is this is all open information. It is meant you are meant to go through this and read all of these so that you're able to plan out your character's advancement. And also notice, so they are all numbered, just in case you want to keep them in order. When you choose a card, when you upgrade your character, there's actually 2 sides to every card. So once you pick the card, you actually then have to choose which side that you want. So, for example, this ability and this ability, you'll never be able to get both of these at the same time. And in the next video, I will teach you guys how we actually go about acquiring these skill cards. So, just take these, set them aside. I just keep them next to the secret deck as well. Next up, the third mini deck you want to pick up is the item deck. Now, the item deck can be ordered in any way you want. It's actually I recommend that you shuffle this thing pretty frequently just to kind of keep the randomness about. Basically, the only time when you get cards out of this deck, you'll know either the locations your character on will tell you to, hey, go get a craftable item, or hey, draw a random item from the item deck. So it's very obvious when you're going to go about getting things from here. Now, there are a couple different types of items in the item deck. Let's see. I'm going to pull out just a handful real quick just so you guys can see them. Actually, I think I got a lot of them lined up already. Let's see. Armor. Okay. Because this part is pretty important. So when the exploration journal or a location card on the field tells you to go get a specific type of item, you'll notice at the very top it'll say something like, let's see if I can get that to focus for you guys. Come on. Anyways, there you go. So that says armor, that says weapon. Then there's some that are just blank. These are just items that you can get that are helpful. There's companions, and sorry, I really wish I can get this to focus just a little bit better. There you go. More armor, I guess. So, and then also another thing that the item deck contains. On some of the items, there will be a, let's see, there will be this letter C at the bottom left. That means that the card is called a craftable item. So sometimes when the explorational journal will say, hey, go draw a random craftable item. Here, I'm going to bring this, I'm just going to adjust real quick. Maybe bring it in a little closer will help with the focusing. So anyways, so let's say sorry, okay. So let's say the exploration journal tells you to, hey, go draw one random craftable item. So the process of that would be is personally, I would shuffle the deck a little bit, and then you flip over item cards until you find a craftable item. That is the card you will draw. The cards that you flipped over, put them back into the deck, give the deck a quick shuffle, and you are ready to go all over again. So that's how you draw craftable items. If it just says one random craftable item, just draw the top card, and that's the item you will get. And it'll tell you specifically if you need to get a specific item in the exploration journal when you need to draw one. So anyways, hope that made sense. Sorry I rambled there for a little bit. But anyways, this is the item deck. Keep that nearby. You'll be getting into that pretty frequently, at least decently frequently, I feel. Okay. Next couple components you're going to need. You are going to need the dice. This is a D6 with some nice little decorations around all of them. I was very impressed when I opened this up, actually. Sorry, I wish that was a little more clear. You're also going to want to grab this Guardian directional dice. So on this, there is a north, east, south, and west directional side. There's an X and a blank space. What you're going to use this for is there's a couple enemies that will remain on the map and move around the map, possibly chasing after you, possibly just getting in your way, and this is the dice you're going to use in order to decide which direction they go. I'm going to get into that just a little bit later I'm going to get to it in the next video. So, but anyways, you want to have both these D6s close by. Okay, after that you want to grab some of your miniatures. So I personally like to have all three of the menhirs nearby, just in case. I'm going to go over what these guys do in this video and then a little bit more in the next. But I like to have all three of them nearby just in case they all get placed in one playthrough. So keep those guys close by. Next up, you want to grab your personal character's miniature. Let's see if I can get this to focus in so you can see it. So this is this is Bjorn. I'm going to use him for this demonstration. Just make sure you have that nearby because he's kind of important. You know, he's going to tell you you're going to use him to travel the map and explore and actually play the game. Next up, everyone received this miniature. This is for one of the Guardian encounters, or like this is an encounter it'll happen in the game. Now, if you purchase the Monsters of Avalon expansion pack, I personally didn't, then you want to get those miniatures and keep them nearby. I personally didn't buy them, And this is the miniature I use for the Guardians, those encounters that you run into where they're going to stay on the map, they're going to move around the map chasing after you. This is the one I use just because that's just what I have available to me. So I like to keep this guy nearby to use for those Guardian encounters. Next up, you want to grab... Actually, let's see. Next up, you want to grab all of your little extra tokens. The two main ones in here are your time tokens and your quest tokens. And it'll be pretty obvious when you need to use these, especially the quest tokens. The Exploration Journal will tell you, hey, place a quest token here on this location when you're finished, or something like that. And you're going to be using these time tokens pretty frequently. So I like to keep all of them nearby just in case. One cool little note that some people don't know. So this is one of the dials that they gave you. I did go out and I did purchase the metal versions of them. So these little time tokens actually fit nice and snugly in the dials. And sometimes there'll be a location you'll explore and it'll say, hey, place a dial on this location at, let's say it told you to place it at, 3. And then every turn you can move the dial to a different number and count down. So cool little thing there. Make sure you keep these nearby. Next up, actually, since I have the dials in my hand, make sure you keep all of these metal dials or the plastic dials nearby as well. You'll be using them pretty frequently. They are used to keep track of how long a menhir is active in your area. You can also use it pretty often in combat to flip. And if it lands skull side up, which it did sadly, or if it lands grail side up, it'll tell you on the card what that means. So that's another use for them. And like I told you when I was talking about the time tokens, they'll be used to keep track of time basically. So keep those close by. Next thing you want to do is you want to grab all of your red cubes and your purple cubes. Just a reminder, the purple cubes represent 5 red cubes. So if your little wealth tray gets all filled up with red ones, you can take 5 of the red ones, place it back in this box, and grab a purple one to represent 5 red cubes. Just so you guys know, this is a hard case used for Magic the Gathering decks. Whenever I ordered a couple cards, these came in them, and they're very, very handy. And it actually fits all of the red and purple cubes very nicely. So anyways, I like this just because I can pop it open and bam, I'm already ready to go. So all right, after that, let's see. Next thing you want to grab is you want to be able to grab all of your help cards. These will be very, very helpful, especially when you're first getting into the game. Just in terms of usefulness, this is the Combat and Diplomacy Overview deck. Just a reminder, you only get 1 copy of these. You don't get 3, unlike the Order of the Day and the Combat and Diplomacy icon card. You only get 1 of these. You'll only really need to read through this a couple times, and you won't really need to use it very often after that. So I like to keep it nearby just in case I have some questions about the rules, but most often I don't actually look at it. So we're going to place that here. The next one is the Order of the Day. This one I use very often, just to make sure I do everything in the exact order that it tells you to do it, because that actually really matters. For example, let's see if I can get this to focus in real quick for you guys. Okay, so if you notice there, it says reveal the next event card. Well, there's some event cards that will tell you to place a Guardian on the map. And once you place the Guardian on the map, then you move down to the Move Guardian action. So the order that this is actually laid out is extremely important. It can have a big effect on how the game plays out. So keep this nearby. Also on the back of it is just an action overview of what you can do during the day. I'm going to go over this in the next video in detail. So keep this guy nearby. After that, this is the Icon Glossary help card. This character advancement section is very useful, and you'll need to look at it decently often. On the back is the Combat and Diplomacy icons. This top section, once you read over it a couple times, you'll kind of memorize what all of the different icons do. But this bottom section, the Enemy Trait section, this labels all of the traits that any enemy you encounter can have. Now, it's tough to memorize exactly what all of these do, just because some of them are very specific with certain numbers you have to remember, and the timing of when things happen. So definitely keep this one visible and nearby so you can reference it every time you draw an encounter to see if any of these traits are on the card and how it affects combat. So anyways, so in terms of usefulness, make sure you keep those nearby. After that, let's see. Next up, you're going to want to grab... actually, wait, hold on. Also, grab a pen. Along with that, actually here, I forgot to show you guys this one. So make sure you grab a pen and also a fresh Tainted Grail save sheet. You're gonna use this half of the save sheet at the very end of your gaming session. You're gonna record down where the menhirs on the map are located, what their dial value was, if there's any quest dials out, guardians, where they're located, your stats at the end of the game. So that way you can just pull this out, reset the game, and continue on your adventure. But the back side of the map has a lot of these what they call statuses. See statuses right there. And throughout the game, when you're exploring in the exploration journal, it'll say, hey, gain the, let's say, the deep secret status. So when that happens, you flip to your status sheet, you look for deep secret right there, go through and just make a little check mark right there. Now, another little bit of confusion I saw in the group, there's a couple of these that have... So, apologies if you guys see this as spoilery, but I think this is very important to talk about. Let's see. Sorry if I get this. Okay. So, for example, let's say let's take hidden treasure. In the exploration journal, when it says it'll say something like gain part 1 of the hidden treasure status. So you'll go through and you'll mark just the one, the one status, and not the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. Also of note, if you explore that same location again that gave you the hidden treasure part 1 status, it's not going to do you any good. Like, for example, you can't explore it again and then mark 2 and then explore it a third time and get 3. The exploration journal will specifically tell you which part of the status you're supposed to mark. So keep those nearby as well. And like I said, also keep a pen. I like to keep it in the box just so I don't have to search around for one. Okay. All right, cool. Now that we've gone over a lot of the components of the game, we're going to actually start setting up for Chapter 1. Okay? So, one of the first things you want to do is there are 2 types of very important cards in your box. There is the chapter setup card and the actual chapter events. By the way, if you hear any yelling, that's my son. He's just excited about something. So, anyways. So, first thing you want to grab is you want to grab your Chapter 1 setup card. And just a note, I don't really view this as spoilery because you're setting up the game for the first time anyways. I won't be showing you what is underneath all of these chapter event cards, but the setup is pretty simple. So, let's just look over this real quick. Let's see if I can get this to focus real quick. Let's see. Anyway, so it'll say something. It says, find all parts. Oh, there you go. Find all parts of Chapter 1 and stack them from 6 bottom, top, to 1 top. So that's pretty simple. You just need to grab your event deck, Chapter 1, Part 1, and as you go through, it'll say Chapter 2, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5, Part 6. So our event deck is now lined up and ready to go. Then you're going to want to flip to the back. And what these setup cards are always going to show you is how to build the encounter deck. So the encounter deck is all of the enemies you're going to face. Sorry, I really wish... Okay, there we go. It's going to show you how to build your encounter decks. These are going to be the enemies you're going to face throughout the whole game. And this is going to show you basically the difficulty that your encounters are going to be. So for example, me as a solo player, I would look at one player and it says use all the cards with 1 red banner. If you're playing a 2 to 4 player game, use all the cards with the 1 and 2 red banner. And I'll show you what that is in just a moment. Next thing up, shuffle the decks, talking about the encounter decks. If this is your first game, place a matching your first encounter card on top of each encounter deck. And then this is just a little intro of, like, you know, you're now ready to start Chapter 1 of the Fall of Avalon. As your first action of the game, try exploring your starting location. Remember, blah, 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 blah. So, anyways, you're all set up and ready. So now let's actually build our encounter decks real quick. I'll show you how to do it. So you're gonna have a big stack of all of these types of encounters. There's the blue encounters, the purple ones, the white ones and the green ones. So just real quick, blue encounters are going to be mainly your diplomacy encounters. When you enter a unfriendly settlement, most of the time it'll say draw a blue encounter, and it's usually like a guard or the crazed people in the village or something, and you're going to have to do a diplomatic encounter. The purple ones are kind of like spirits and things like that, kind of the creepy things in the woods. And this is going to be your combat encounters. Green, these are things of the woods, stags, bears, rabbits, things like that. You're gonna do a combat encounter with them in here. And the white one is kind of the people of Avalon. You can run into knights or robbers or bad people, things like that. So that's just generally what all these do. So to build the encounter deck, I'm going to try and cover up some of these as best I can see. Let me find. There, okay. So what you're looking for in the top left corner, right there, you'll see a little red banner. Let's see if I can get that to focus real quick. So that denotes that this encounter card is a level 1 encounter. And according to the setup, we need to grab as a solo player, we need to grab all of the cards that have level 1 banners like this. Now, I went through and previously got this all set up for you guys. So these are all of the level 1 encounters that you can face. And I did the same thing with all of the other 3 decks. The encounters that you're not using, just keep them in the box. You generally won't have to go through and dig through those until the next chapter. So just a couple rules about encounter cards. Like the setup said, if this is your first time playing the game, you're going to want to take the one that says your first encounter and place it on top of your blue deck. Same with your purple, green, and white as well. And then now, if this isn't your first time playing, your first encounter card actually stays in the deck. You don't ever take it out because it is still an enemy. You can still draw it even if you're a veteran player. Okay? So a couple little rules about encounter cards. When the game tells you, hey, draw a white encounter, you'll simply draw 1 card, flip it over, and you'll either do a diplomatic or a combat encounter. In terms of a white one, it's always going to be a combat encounter. So you will then do a combat sequence once this encounter is defeated. Once it is defeated or you run away, you will take this card and place it underneath at the very bottom of each encounter deck. It's good to keep them in order just so you don't run into the same enemy over and over again. But at the start of each chapter, when it tells you to set up a new encounter deck, you will have to shuffle these. It is not imperative that these decks stay in order. So if you're packing up one day and you drop the cards and they get spilled everywhere and you have to put them back in order, it's not a big deal if they're not in the exact order they were before you drop them. So don't overstress about keeping these in order, but it is kind of nice just so you don't run into the same thing over and over again. Okay, so keep these also nearby. I'm just stacking them up just because I don't have a lot of room up here. But keep those nearby because you'll be drawing them from pretty often. So once that's all set up, now we get to set up our first map. So this is all the location cards. I like to keep all of them nearby just in case. I don't know how, just depending on how long of a gaming session I can get through. To set up the first map, you're going to need location card number 101, 102, 103, 104, and 105. So once again, apologies if you feel this is spoilers, but for me to teach you how to play this game, I think this is the best way to go about it. So the way I'm gonna go over exactly how these location cards work now. So at the very top, you have the location number, very important to keep an eye on, the name of the location, and then these little icons here. There are 3 different types of icons that you'll see on a location card. Sorry, let me see if I can get this a little more focused for you guys. Okay, there we go. So the 3 symbols you're going to see on the far left, you kind of see that blue one. It looks like an eye. What that means is that if you end your turn here, you will have a dream. And how you experience the dream is you go to your exploration journal, go to section 101, and there'll be a whole section that's very obvious, and it'll say dream at the very top, and you'll read that. Now, of note, if you if attached to your character is the "you are dying" card or "you are going insane" card, instead of reading the dream part of the dream sequence, you will actually read the nightmare section of the dream, which is pretty obvious in the exploration journal. You'll see it when you turn to it. This middle icon will tell you if there is a settlement here, if there's a village or if there's people living there, and that can be very important for there's certain cards that only work when you're in a settlement or if you're outside of a settlement. If the settlement is green, that means it is friendly. If it is red, that means it is unfriendly. Now, that generally doesn't have a ton of effect on the game, but it is good to note. Usually, if this symbol is red and it's unfriendly, usually you'll have to do a blue encounter as you enter the settlement. On the far right here, this little purple icon with a little statue on it, that means that there is a menhir located here, or you can reactivate or activate a menhir, and it's located on this location. Okay? And what's really nice is on the back of all of these exploration cards, I'll kind of cover up this top half for you. At the very bottom of it will tell you the requirements for activating that menhir. And also of note, you can always look at this no matter what. In my opinion, you don't have to actually be on the location to look at this. I don't know. It's just more helpful that way. I think it's kind of silly if you... Well, anyways. So anyways, the requirements to activate the menhir will be on the back of all the cards that have the menhir symbol down here. So next up, on a handful of locations, let's get this to focus a bit more. If I hold still, if I do something like this. There we go. So on a lot of locations, there is a location action. So for example, on this location, you can do chores for the townspeople. You can spend 1 energy, and you will gain 1 rep once per day. Now, important thing to note, if it says once per day, once you do that action, you will then take one of these little gray time tokens, and you'll place it on your location to signify that you have already done the location action. And at the start of the next day, it'll be removed, and you can do it again. Okay, great. At the very bottom here, there's just a little bit of flavor text. Always nice to read that just to kind of get in the mood while you play. Now, the next big important thing is on the edges of all the cards, you will see these numbers, 102, 103, 104, and 105. What that tells you is that this location is connected to these other locations. So, for example, location 101 is now set up. We can now place location 102 up here, location 103 to the west, location 104 to the east, and location 105 in the south. So this is your starting map. Every time you start a new game of Tainted Grail, brand new game, your character died and you have to build a new one, this is where your character will start the game. So now that you have your locations all set up, the next thing you got to do is you get to pick one of the 3 different menhirs that were provided within the box. This is personally my favorite one, the one that has the big hole in it, like a meteor shot through it. You're going to take this menhir, you're going to place it on location 101. I usually just in terms of where you place it, a lot of people, I don't know, I've seen people put it up to the side here. I usually just cover up the whole location number because usually I can remember what's underneath it. You're then going to take one of these dials. Let's see if I can get it to focus. There we go. And you're going to set this to 8 for 1 player, 7 for 2 players, 6 for 3 players, and 5 for if you're playing with 4 players. Reason being that if you have four players, you can explore the map a lot faster, and you don't need as many days as a solo player. So us as a solo, playing solo, we're going to set this dial to 8. And it's just going to slot right inside the menhir like so. Okay? Next, you're going to also want to grab your character model, and it is going to start in location 101. Okay, great. Let's see. The last thing we need to do. So here we have the chapter event cards. The last thing you're going to need to do is you want to grab this random event deck. So as you flip this over, it's going to tell you like your quest. It's going to tell you of certain events that occur as you play the game. And sometimes on the back of these cards, it'll say, hey, place X amount of random event cards on top of the event deck. So let's say, for example, I draw Chapter 1, Part 1, and I place it here. Then I flip over Chapter 1, Part 2, and it says, hey, place 5 random event cards on the deck. So I will quickly shuffle these up. Grab 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just for an example, and you will then place it not where you flip the event deck, but on top of the remaining part of the event deck. This is going to lengthen the amount of time that you could play this chapter. When you flip these over, just simply read the card and it will tell you what to do. All right, guys. Here, I'm going to back this up and kind of show you just my personal setup real quick. I'm going to try and do, here, actually, I'm going to block you guys off so you don't get, there we go, okay. So this is personally how I have my game all set up. I have all the location cards set here. This is my exploration journal, save sheet, and rule book. Help cards. That's just a set of cards, so no need to have that. I keep the random events over here next to the event deck down here. Those are my diplomatic and combat cards. Encounters will go there, and I spread them out by color. Just it's a little cluttered right now. And then just everything else up there. So if you guys follow that, you are now fully set up to play Chapter 1 of Tainted Grail. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Keep an eye out for Part 3. In Part 3, we're going to go over how to play the game, what you do on your turn, how you spend your energy, and things of that. And then the video after that, we're going to go over how combat works and how diplomacy works. Thank you guys for joining me. Had a great time chatting with you guys, and hope you guys are having an awesome time playing this amazing game. We'll see you guys around. Bye.